Meanwhile, a day at the pool leads in a deadly shootout on Indy's Northeast. Shot and killed at the Lawrence Landing Apartments earlier this month.
California man finally free after serving 16 years for a crime he didn't commit.
Strong kind of person to make it through 16 years.
To go out in society and prove that I've spent these last 16 years preparing myself to be free.
Cole's life sentence was actually...
A lot of people say life can completely change in a split second. For Reggie Cole, this theory turned out to be true. Reggie Cole is an American man who went to prison for a crime he didn't commit and got out for a crime he did commit. In 1975, Cole was added to a family with 4 other children, 2 boys and 2 girls, with him being the youngest. In 1985, the Cole family packed up and moved to Los Angeles. Due to financial restraints, the family was forced to live in a low-income, high-crime community. This part of town was well known for gangs and the accompanying gang violence. Sadly, this was the crowd one of Cole's older brothers, Kenny, liked hanging around. At age 15, Cole's older brother, Kenny, became a member of a very popular gang named the 9 Deuce Hoover Crips. This was a very popular black gang at the time. Even though Kenny was a troubled child, his younger brother, Reggie, adored him and would follow him around. This would mean at the age of 11, Reggie was regularly hanging out with gang members. The thing about gangs is they almost always have enemy gangs, and for a big and popular gang like the 9 Deuce Hoover faction of the Crips, they had loads of enemies. One day, an enemy gang ambushed the Hoover Crips and killed many of them. Sadly, Kenny Cole was one of the victims of the ambush. The news of Kenny's death absolutely shattered Reggie. Surprisingly, he took to his studies to get his mind off of his brother's death. In the case of nature versus nurture, nurture almost always wins. Because Cole had inherited almost all of Kenny's gang friends, he ended up quitting school and officially became a member of the 9 Deuce Hoover Crips. Together with his friend Obie Anthony, Cole became a total menace. The disintegration of his family didn't help him either. His 2 older sisters had gotten married and moved away with their husbands. His other older brother moved states away for a job opportunity. Lastly, Cole's father left his mother and disappeared to another state. His mother did what she could, but she really couldn't stop Cole's criminal ways. Around that time, Cole had started to grow and sell weed. That, along with other petty crimes, landed him in a juvenile detention center at the age of 16. Shortly after that, Cole was arrested for illegal possession of a firearm. He was eventually released, but he continued being a gangbanger. On the 28th of March 1994, a man named Felipe Angeles was shot and killed in front of a brothel. An eyewitness named John Jones claimed he saw 3 teenagers who were gang members approach him and demanded money from him. When Felipe said he had no money, the teens angrily shot him and left. Jones, who was also the owner of the brothel, claimed he had seen it happen from the 2nd floor of his apartment, which was directly opposite the brothel. He also added that one of the teenagers who shot Felipe was limping. Using this information, the police began searching for suspects with leg injuries. This search led them to Cole. Cole said he thought he was being questioned for a robbery, but soon realized it was for a murder. It wasn't long before Cole and his friend Obie Anthony were given life sentences for the death of Felipe Angeles. Cole was sent to Calipatria State Prison, one of the worst and most violent prisons in America. Cole was dressed in an orange jumpsuit and taken to his new home. He said the bus ride was long and nerve-wracking. The bus drove on a deserted road until they arrived at a huge complex made up of multiple buildings and extended over a large area in the literal middle of nowhere. It had a huge electrified wire fence. Anyone who dared to escape would be electrocuted. Cole and the other inmates were identified and stripped naked to confirm they had no weapons or contraband on them, after which they were given more prison attire and taken to their cells. The cells in the prison were like a grave. They had 4 concrete walls with cement ceilings and no windows. The doors were made of cold steel with a small opening in the middle that opened and closed from the outside. Each cell had a bunk bed, a sink, and a toilet. When Cole got to his cell, he noticed his cellmate. Instead of trying to get to know him, Cole refused to make eye contact or even talk to him because he didn't know exactly how dangerous his cellmate could be. He took the top bunk and just stayed there staring at the ceiling. That night, Cole's cellmate had visitors. His cellmate invited them in and tried to placate the situation, but they beat and raped him. Meanwhile, Cole laid still on his bed, pretending to be asleep. This incident repeated itself every single night. Cole realized he was right to have chosen to be the quiet and mysterious prisoner. He also realized in order to completely avoid ending up like his cellmate, he needed to find a way to protect himself. Cole quickly observed that most prisoners had improvised shanks they carried around with them. These tools were mostly made out of objects they found lying around. He then decided to use a stone and his toothbrush to make one for himself. Using the stone, Cole sharpened the tip of his toothbrush until it was sharp enough to stab someone with. One day, while Cole was strolling in the prison yard, a group of prisoners approached and circled. It was clear they were members of a gang. In a bid to assert dominance, the biggest one of them grabbed him and fixed him on the fence. Cole quickly realized that if he backed down, he was going to end up like his roommate, and since the eyes of all prisoners were on them, this was his chance to assert dominance. He quickly took out the toothbrush from his pocket and stabbed his attacker in the waist. The stab was enough to injure him, but not enough to kill him. The gang members immediately took their leader and left Cole alone. By doing this, Cole had sent a clear message to the inmates. He is armed and not to be messed with. After this incident, Cole was taken in by a gang called 49. These people became his friends and family there. They watched his back, and he watched theirs. Despite the large number of gangs in Calipatria State Prison, all of them were subject to one man, the king of Calipatria, a man named El Diablo, Spanish for the devil. He was the biggest and most violent man in Calipatria. His real name was Eddie Clark, but he earned the name El Diablo because of how ruthless and vile he was. For El Diablo, prison was not only his home, but his business too. He smuggled drugs and contraband into the prison, and no one could stop him. Even the prison guards were intimidated by Clark. Everyone knew how dangerous El Diablo was, and did their best to avoid him. He was only 35 years old, but had spent 20 of those years in prison. He violently beat and killed another teen in a juvenile center when he was 13. At 18, he was released, but immediately joined a gang. Not long after, he broke into an old woman's house, assaulted her, and killed her son who tried to protect her. He was arrested and given a life sentence. The thing is, El Diablo had a bad temper and a lot of mood swings. At any moment, he could turn on his friends. He would go as far as beating, stabbing, and raping them for as little as looking at him wrong. For years, Cole smartly stayed under the radar and out of El Diablo's sight. He would either spend most of his time playing basketball with his gang members or exercising. At 24, Cole was a well-built, muscular man, a huge difference from the scrawny teenager he was when he was brought in. Over time, Diablo became a moody drunkard and became more violent with his rapes and stabbings. Cole kept on doing his best to avoid Diablo, but their worlds eventually collided. In October of 2000, while the prisoners were in the outer yard, one of them threw a rock at a guard. The guards immediately ordered the prisoners to lie down flat on their stomachs for an impromptu search. During the search, one of the guards saw a handmade knife on the ground and demanded to know who it belonged to. Now what they didn't know was that the knife belonged to Diablo's favorite assistant and roommate. Of course, Diablo wanted to protect his friend, so he decided to put the blame on someone. He looked around and randomly pointed at Cole and said the knife belonged to him. The thing is, Cole's no-nonsense personality was not picky. He would stand up to anyone who did him wrong. He immediately said the knife didn't belong to him. This shocked everyone into silence. They had all expected him to take the blame because he was in for life, and because everyone was terrified of Diablo. They didn't expect him to stand up to him over something so small. During the week that followed, Cole was always on high alert, because he knew for a fact that Diablo was coming for him. He was right, because a month later, in November of 2000, Cole noticed El Diablo walking directly towards him. Not stealthily, just directly walking towards him. Cole didn't know what to do, so he just stood there and waited. El Diablo walked right up to Cole and stabbed him in the waist. It wasn't a kill shot, but a warning. He wanted Cole to remember who the king of Calipatria is. He pulled out the knife and walked away. Cole clutched onto his wound to control the bleeding and looked around for help. Everyone saw what happened, but no one came to his aid, not even the guards. They all just pretended like it didn't happen. Minutes later, the bell rang, indicating exercise time was over, and they were all expected to return to their cells. Cole took that opportunity to dig up a knife he had hidden in the outer yard of the prison and hid it in his pocket. Unfortunately, the guards were performing a routine check to make sure no one had any sharp objects or contraband. At that moment, Cole decided to end it all. He got out of his line and walked straight to El Diablo and stabbed him in the neck in front of everyone. Everyone was frozen in shock. Even a stunned El Diablo looked at Cole in utter shock. This shock soon turned into desperation, as Cole pulled the knife out of his neck, leaving him to choke on his own blood. El Diablo fell to the ground and gasped for air until he died. While the inmates and guards were still looking in shock, Cole laid down flat on his stomach, put his hands up, and kept repeating, "I know what I did." The police immediately took him to solitary confinement. The whole prison was in a state of lockdown that night. El Diablo's death could lead to further violence, so as precaution, the guards locked them in their cells for their own protection. Cole was now facing a second murder charge. He narrowly escaped a death sentence from his first conviction, and this time, there's just no way he'll be saved. So when he was brought a list of state lawyers he could choose from, he randomly picked Christopher Plord. Christopher Plord ended up being the best decision he ever made. In order to properly defend Cole, Plord decided to dig into his first case. He took a thorough look at the Felipe Angeles case and discovered that while yes, Cole belonged to a gang and had a limp because of a gunshot wound, because of all the new evidence Plord had in the Felipe Angeles case, Cole and Anthony were acquitted for his murder. However, Cole was given a 10-year solitary confinement sentence for Diablo's death. He had already spent 8 of those years in solitary confinement while the court case proceeded and was released after 2 years. In response to his first conviction, Cole sued the state of Los Angeles for wrongful imprisonment and was given a $5.2 million settlement. He eventually earned his GED and is now living a peaceful life as a free man. So Reggie Cole freed the inmates and guards of Calipatria State Prison from the devil's reign as king, earned his release from prison, and came out of it a wealthy man. It was almost like a real-life ending to Stephen King's classic Shawshank Redemption. His instant decision to fight El Diablo, even with the threat it posed to his life, garnered him his freedom.